At the height of the Cold War, the Soviet Union and NATO had thousands of nuclear warheads carried by highly advanced long-range bombers, by submarines and by missiles. But after 1964 there was a new fearsome competitor, the Westland Wasp, the smallest nuclear-armed aircraft ever built. The story of the Wasp begins in the late 1950s, when the Royal Navy began to consider putting a helicopter on its small frigates for use against enemy submarines. In 1958, trials were carried out on HMS Undaunted using a prototype called the P531, which established that it was possible to operate a helicopter off the very small flight deck available on a ship of this size. The design process continued, with the P531 progressing quickly into the Westland Scout, a general-purpose light helicopter that was bought by the British Army. In September 1961, the Royal Navy placed an order for a naval version of the Scout, looking for a highly manoeuvrable, small aircraft that still had enough engine power to be able to carry 2 homing torpedoes to attack hostile submarines with. To achieve that, several changes were made to the Scout's design, including a more powerful engine which increased lift capacity and the aircraft's top speed to 110 knots. The chosen engine, the Nimbus, was tough and simple enough to work even without an engine cover, the lack of which the Wasp inherited from the Scout. The big visible change from the Scout was the undercarriage. The Scout's skids were replaced with wheels that could swivel freely. This was designed to provide a lot more stability and grip when landing on a pitching flight deck, and the legs of the undercarriage were strong enough to withstand being forced down at significant speed. The Wasp could also angle its rotors to push itself down onto the deck when landing. The result was an aircraft which would operate effectively from a very small area in very rough seas. And because the design was simple, the development was very short. The Wasp first flew in October 1962, and by March 1964 it was already in service with the Royal Navy, just 2.5 years after the original order was placed. For the next 2 decades, the Wasp operated from British ships all over the world, and also from the decks of the Dutch, Malaysian, New Zealander, Brazilian, Indonesian and South African navies. Arguably the Wasp's finest hour came during the 1982 Falklands War, by which time it was an ageing design that had been superseded by the new Lynx aircraft, but that didn't stop it from playing a full role nonetheless. Britain's first goal in the conflict was to retake the island of South Georgia, which was seized by Argentine troops at the start of April 1982. On April 25th, the task group comprised of the destroyer Antrim, frigates Plymouth and Brilliant, and the Antarctic patrol ship HMS Endurance began operations to take back the island, starting with locating and neutralising the Argentine submarine Santa Fe, which was known to be in the area. After being detected by Antrim's Wessex and damaged by a depth charge, Santa Fe was then attacked by Brilliant's Lynx and 3 Wasps flying from Plymouth and Endurance. All 3 aircraft engaged the submarine with wire-guided AS-12 missiles. The first missile, from Lieutenant Commander John Ellerbeck's aircraft, was the first firing in anger of a guided missile by the Royal Navy in its history. Santa Fe was forced to return to Grytviken on South Georgia, where she was eventually scuttled. It was the first time that helicopters had successfully engaged a submarine, and the Wasp, a near 20-year-old design at this point, was right at the heart of it. The Wasp would go on to play an important role throughout the campaign in the South Atlantic, especially with casualty evacuation, where its small size allowed it to operate on badly damaged vessels. When HMS Sheffield was mortally wounded by an Exocet on May 4th, HMS Yarmouth's Wasp played a key role in lifting firefighting equipment onto the stricken destroyer's deck and evacuating wounded sailors. The same aircraft would then repeat the trick for HMS Ardent and when HMS Glamorgan was hit by an Exocet on June 12th. Now these missions were typical of the Wasp's role as a light helicopter, but what was not so typical is that this tiny little aircraft with no engine cover and the wheels of a shopping trolley was capable of carrying a nuclear weapon. The weapon in question was a WE-177A nuclear bomb. With a maximum yield of 10 kilotons, this was the smallest of the 3 variants of the bomb that served as Britain's primary tactical nuclear weapon at this time. For attacks on land, it would be fitted to fast jets like the Buccaneer and Tornado, but it was also designed for use at sea as a massive depth charge. For this role, it could be mounted in a number of different helicopters, including the Sea King, Wessex, and even the tiny Wasp. Now, this was a huge bomb, so big that it had to be carried diagonally on such a small aircraft. And the added weight was such that even after taking the doors off, the Wasp would only have 20 minutes flying time to leave the ship, drop the depth charge, and make it back again. And with a top speed of, let's remember, only 110 knots, there were many Wasp pilots who considered it doubtful they would ever make it back from a nuclear sortie. It was these same bombs that caused a real problem for the British during the Falklands War in 1982, because 4 ships that were hastily reassigned to head south that April were carrying them as part of their normal munition loads. The carriers Hermes and Invincible, as well as the Type 22 frigates Brilliant and Broadsword. It quickly became clear this was a serious problem. If any ship carrying a nuclear depth charge had been sunk, that would have created a significant environmental hazard, and there were also legal issues. The Falklands, as part of South America, was prohibited from having any nuclear weapons on its territory or in its waters. Any ship with a nuclear depth charge on board would be unable to operate close to the islands. To solve this, the bombs on the frigates were moved to the 2 carriers, which wouldn't be required to enter the Falklands territorial waters anyway, which would avoid any breach of international law. As the 1980s progressed, the Wasps were gradually phased out of service. In the Royal Navy, the final aircraft ended their service when the last Type 12 frigates were decommissioned in the spring of 1988. The Wasp did survive elsewhere though. In Indonesia, they were still in service into the 21st century. It was a remarkable aircraft. Designed and built at the height of the Cold War, when helicopters were still a new technology, and yet still serving effectively 4 decades later. Tough, versatile, and capable of atomic devastation, it's a reminder that even the smallest aircraft can pack quite a punch. Hi everyone, thanks for watching this video. I really appreciate it. It's the first one this year, and it's different in format to previous videos. You can probably tell because I'm here talking on camera a lot more. Just trying new things with the new year to try and find a bit more of a groove for the channel to fit into after what has been quite a difficult 2025. If you want to support the channel, Patreon links are all over the place. You can get early access to videos and behind the scenes updates and all that kind of stuff. Or buy a poster. They're really good. And I would love to sell you one. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.